Hi, everyone. That was a really great introduction, by the way. And people here are so nice. I love it. And I just got here like half an hour ago, by the way. I'd like to quickly check the room. How many of you are entrepreneurs, business owners? How many of you are working for a corporate? How many of you network at least once a month? Almost everybody. How many of you have had awkward encounters at networking events? Is there somebody that hasn't had? Because you should probably be giving this talk then. We're going to go through 9 different things that you can immediately put into practice, probably at the lunch break that you have right after this. I'm Aditya, and I'm a civic hacker and a startup matchmaker. I'm a freelance entrepreneur. I work with a couple of different organizations that help startups and entrepreneurs work with the government, with investors, and also corporates. On the other side, I also started an initiative called the Soft Skills Hub together with my partner over there, Ali. A shout out for him. We just like helping entrepreneurs, executives, and students become more comfortable in social scenarios. You're talking about being an introvert. You cannot tell right away, but I'm an introvert as well. And I get paid to network. So for the first 16, 17 years of my life, I was just very comfortable in social scenarios, corner of a room, right? Letting things go by. I would still talk to people, but then I was very comfortable in my bubble. But then I did things most introverts do, which is observing. Introverts are thoughtful people. And I started seeing some people that are very charismatic in the crowd, and I started seeing, what are they doing differently? Is there something that they're doing that can be done by most other people? And then I started picking up on a couple of things. I started reading up on things. So that is what we're going to talk about today. What I would like you to know is that this is not a science class. So if there's some NLP experts or somebody over here, please watch out. This is just my personal experience. Everything has a context to it, so take what you will, right? And also keep in mind there are a lot of cultural aspects that go into networking as well. And this is not some techniques that you can use to manipulate people. This is just about being nice, being empathetic, trying to understand what the other person is actually feeling and responding to it. People have fear of networking because being by yourself is just comfortable. We're so used to that, right? Given a chance, I would probably want to do that myself. Then I also realized when you put yourself out there, when you go out, meet people, good things happen. And you only know that when you go out there, once you start doing it. Awkwardness. Think back to the moments where you have been awkward. A couple of things happen to you. Right? You might start to sweat a little bit. You might become a little shaky. Maybe your voice becomes a little shaky. Maybe you feel like you're falling off. Right? And you realize your heart is beating in a very weird rhythm. What happens to us when we see that beautiful sunset or a sunrise? Or it needn't be a sunrise or a sunset. If you like art, buildings, architecture, whatever. What happens to us then? We feel comfortable. We feel like we are in the moment. We feel like there's a breeze in our hair. And we also realize our heart is beating right. this was my biggest understanding last year, which is my biggest takeaway. So if you can take one thing away from this, it would be this. One underlining factor, which probably is the biggest difference between both of these things, I've realized, is just breathing. It is not some kind of deep yoga way of taking deep breaths or taking these 3 long breaths before you do something, but just having this breathing under your control. You want to breathe fast? Do that. You want to breathe slow? Do that. Next time you're awkward, just get your breathing under your control and you will see a lot of things change for you. Going into the 9 things. By the way, this is a 2.5-hour workshop. She said, can you do it in 30 minutes? I said, okay. A 3-second rule. Unzila, can I please ask you to come on the stage? I asked these 3 lovely ladies to be my props. They're going to help me out. Thanks for...
And when I saw that sign say awkward, I was kind of like running away. It
is too late. It is too late. 3-second rule. It's not... If the food falls on the floor, you can pick it up right away. That is not the one that I'm talking about. That's a 5-second rule, okay? The 3-second rule is something that I advocate people. At a networking scenario, people tend to really overthink things, right? Especially when you want to walk up to somebody that you don't know. You have to understand they're there for networking, so you're expecting to be networking. So do not overthink things. Just walk up to a person and say hi.
Hi.
Make up your mind in that 3 seconds and walk up to them. I don't mean run to them in that 3 seconds. Do not do that. Yeah. And also something interesting. Also, if you can stand just like that, if I wanted to talk to Unzila and I'm standing somewhere over here, I really advocate do not approach them from behind. That's very creepy. I would go all the way around over there and say hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. It's little things, right? We tend to forget these things. So this is what we're going to talk about today. It's just you are at a networking scenario. What can you do now, right? The second thing. Can I ask you 2 ladies also to come onto the stage, please? When I'm talking, get comfortable on the stage. There are a lot of things that you can understand by just looking at groups of people. How many of you have walked into a room and not understood which group should I join? Where should I walk into? A lot of you, right? Look out for this. Next time you see this. I can ask you slightly. Together? Yes. All right. So, the 2 different kinds of groups that you see, a closed group and an open group. Very simple. You see this. This is a closed group. We are having an intimate conversation. We hope you don't disturb us. If you have to, maybe you can try, but we hope not, right? And then you see groups that are just slightly open. They might not even be doing this consciously. It could just be the subconscious, just asking you to join the group, or they're just open for that opportunity. Right? One more thing. You could also tell little cues. People are doing this, again, psychologically. They're not doing this thinking it through. Just by looking at their feet, you can tell. I'm not talking about your lovely shoes, no. No. Just by looking at your feet, sometimes you can tell if the person is interested in talking to you or wants to walk away. If I am talking to this group and my feet are that way, I am thinking, or I'm trying to walk away, and I'm there. So next time you're in a conversation, you're not sure if it's going well or not, just look at the feet. And on the other side, if you are that person, try to not give these cues away. It's not very nice, right? One more thing. Turns out, and this is recorded psychologically, people, when it comes to men, you come off more confident when you're standing a little bit with your feet apart. This probably is still the cowboy thing that's been ingrained in our brains, but then it apparently still works. For women, you look a little bit more gracious when you have your legs together, feet together. Yeah. Yeah. You can go back. I'll probably call you back. Thank you. Yes. I felt a little bit like a magician asking people to come onto the stage. Question master is very simple. Is in a networking scenario, people tend to be very conscious because they're worried, what am I going to say? Right? Maybe you don't have something that is very interesting to say, and you start second-guessing yourself. Just make it about the other person. Have some questions already prepared that you want to ask people, but then also just genuinely take interest in people, because people like talking about themselves. And even in a scenario where you're talking to an investor or a future client, let them do the talking. I came up with something for myself. I call it the listening scale, which is if you're having a conversation with somebody, 70% of the time, if the other person is the one that is talking, again, not set in stone 70%, if the other person is talking more than you are in a conversation, you're doing very well. You're doing very well. And as entrepreneurs trying to talk to an investor, you're always thinking, okay, let me tell him about all the 101 features that my product has. Just take interest. Try understand what the other person wants you to actually know. The Big Talk. There's a really nice TED Talk on YouTube called The Big Talk. The lady just goes around asking people, what is the one thing that you want to do before you die? And you see people talking about things that actually mean a lot to them. Networking scenarios, what do we usually talk to people about? The weather is crap. The trains are running late. What do you do for a living? Right? All right, these things are all right to talk about. The people that you really connect with are the people that you have real conversations with. Even at networking scenarios like this. Talk to people about real things. You can ask them, who are you? Get to know their story. One of the first things that you can ask them is the question that the lady went around asking in that YouTube video, which is, hey, I just went to this networking workshop and he was talking about the Big Talk, and he came up with this question. I'd like to ask you that question. What is the one thing that you want to do before you die? Or a more sensible way of putting that is, what is one thing that you've always wanted to do and didn't have the chance to do yet? Right? I've heard some amazing stories. I put this one up because this is the one that comes up most frequently, which people say they want to go skydiving. This one time in Barcelona, at this event called the Mobile World Congress, which is really an event with 250,000 people, they're having repetitive conversations, right? The same kind of conversations over and over again. And I kept asking people this question. There was this lady who came back to me 2-3 hours after we had a conversation. I saw her walk right across the room to me. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, thanks for asking this question. I've been talking to people the exact same things repetitively all day for 3 days, right? You know what she told me? What is the one thing that you want to do, didn't have the chance to do yet? She said she wanted to be a mom. And she surprised herself. That was the first thing that came to her mind. There's so much to talk about when things like this come up. 10 minutes. You can also talk about food. You can talk about sport. Yeah. You can talk about travel. That's always nice. Talk about those things. And then make an appointment where you have a real meeting. Then you can go through your 101 features of the product. Here's where you usually have an exercise where people are practicing things, but we don't have time for that. The latecomer. We've all been that person. We've all been that person. So, when this happens, you already know one thing you could do. You know how to find an open group and a closed group, so you can use that. Then also, use the 3-second rule and just walk up to the group and start talking. It could just be hi. That is it. It doesn't have to be so complex. It doesn't have to be so complicated. Just the beginning of the conversation. Can I ask you three to come on stage again? Can you give them a round of applause again? Yeah. All right.
Am I going to be that person?
You are going to be that person. You knew it. So we are having a conversation. Ursula is standing over there. All of us have been that person, right? All of us have been that person. It's weird. The most common thing you would do in that scenario is take your phone out, pretending to be texting somebody, or just walking around. I've seen people make fake phone calls even, you know. These things happen.
I'll go to the bathroom.
Or go to the bathroom, yeah. In this scenario, she would have some conversations that day. But if I were the person that said, would you like to join us?
Hi, yes.
Hey,
Ursula.
Aditya, nice to meet you.
Hi, Ursula.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much nicer.
Yeah, I could literally say anything. I could say, when she joins, I could also say, by the way, we were just talking about the new Marvel movie or something else, whatever you're talking about. Would you like to weigh in? What is your opinion? She might not remember any conversation that she had that day. She's going to remember me for doing that. And it's so easy to do, right? And also, from the other side, if you are this person, please do not overthink. Just walk up to a group and join them. Right? Yeah, thank you. The name caller, that's just a pun on words. Don't take it literally. Does anybody here, like me, have trouble remembering names? The easiest thing that you can do is, first of all, try to get the person's name right, especially if it's my name, like Aditya, like, what did you say? Right? You could ask them back saying, repeat it and say, Aditya, did I say it right? Yeah. And then try to drop in that name a couple of times during the conversation. It does a couple of things. One, it helps you remember the name, because if you're as bad as me, you need that. And the second thing is, when you call somebody's name, you have their attention. That helps as well. Yeah. The comforter. Well, besides the fact that the word friends is written on top and everybody knowing the show, you can tell the people in that picture are friends. And you can tell that because of how comfortable they are around each other. They don't mind putting a hand on each other's shoulders, or in this case, share a smoothie, is it? A milkshake, yeah. I'm not saying do this to a stranger that you meet for the very first time. You can do a subtle version of this. Not in the first 5 minutes, but when you're having a good conversation and somebody says something nice, if you just put your hand a little bit on their shoulder and say, that's a really cool thing that you said. That's a really nice experience. Take culture into context. This wouldn't work everywhere. And also, please be very careful where your hands go. Yeah, we've all had that as well. Yeah. Sometimes you're in a conversation where you don't know how to end the conversation. So people say, okay, I'm going to go get a drink, or I'm going to go to the toilet and do this. A couple of things you can do. One thing is have a standard goodbye, or 2 or 3 standard goodbyes that you can use. You can always say, it was really nice meeting you. Here is my business card, or let's add each other on LinkedIn. Yeah? And then you walk away. You could also do one thing that can be really nice. If you actually had a good conversation with somebody, you can say, there's somebody I want you to meet, and go try and look for that person and say, oh, no, I'm not saying go away. I'm saying connect the 2 of these people. Right? I can say, I would really like you to meet Ebery because she is such an amazing person. And then I try to find Ebery and then connect these 2 people. This is something you could do. And also, something would be nice to say while saying goodbye, because sometimes you say goodbye and you see that same person again at a networking scenario. What do we usually do? We walk away. It's not a nice feeling, right? A simple thing that you could do in that scenario while saying goodbye, especially if the networking is going to go longer, say, maybe I will bump into you again at this event. That is it. So when you see the person again, if you want to talk to them, otherwise smile. Don't walk that way, but maybe slightly easier. What not to do? I would like to ask the 3 of you to come onto the stage once again. Unsula. Just 2 minutes, is that all right? Yeah, the holder is very simple. The person that just doesn't shut up. And if you want to be a leader in that scenario, what you could do is say, you could just say, that's really cool. And then divert the attention to somebody else. Unsula, what do you think about this, right? That is something that you could do. If you're that person, if you're the holder, if you're talking the 70% of the time in the conversation, you know you might be the holder, so slow down, all right? The watchtower, if you can come over here. Sometimes you see people that are blocking out the others in a conversation. And you could be doing this without realizing that you're doing this. Then if you can just pay a little bit of an attention to see who is actually in the conversation, you could avoid this scenario. Yeah. The fidget is somebody who is just playing around with their hands a lot, or they just don't know where to put their hands. Yeah. Find things that are comfortable for you. What do you usually do at the networks? You fidget. I've heard somebody say, which is the simplest thing, which is basically, okay, easy way to avoid fidgeting is to hold a glass of beer or a glass of wine. And then you only have one hand to worry about.
Useful as well, because I talk with my hands, so I need it.
Yeah, all right. But then also find some ways that are comfortable for you. What I usually do in a conversation is I have my hands over here. This is usually what I'm doing, right? Not playing a symphony, but just that. And I could also, if it's a casual setting, I could also just stand this way, right? This is also fine. But then don't try to hide your hands. That's also gives off a cue of you not being very comfortable. And if you fidget a lot, it can also come off as a person who is not very trustworthy as well. So just find things that are comfortable for you, and you could do that. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, everyone. That actually brings us to the end of this. Thank you very much. I'm Aditya, and you've just learned the 9 basics to build strong relations at a networking event. Thank you.